If you've ever delved into the realms of the avant-garde genre, you'll find this will mean an array of things, from looking and sounding a bit dodgy to just bewildering your brain cells. However, one must look at the term avant-garde and see that it may also mean new. This means that 30 years ago something may look or sound weird or totally different, but now, in the present tense, it may just be, well, normal. One must look and also see that normal does not really come to terms with the Residents, a group of musicians who have been going on for 40 years and still sound a bit dodgy. You could easily rip apart the Residents. Oh. These guys, I suppose I can only say, could make other experimental dudes like Mr. Bungle, Captain Beefheart, Throbbing Gristle, the Butthole Surfers sound like a band put together to just make nursery sing-along songs. So with this, the Residents could easily be swept aside as pretentious, eccentric crap. However, we should look back to the avant-garde being known as new looks and sounds. And this is definitely where the Residents should be known as great innovators and pioneers of music, especially in the early 70s. We can see the early births of art rock and, influence others out there who wear masks, and are also the first band to ever have made a music video. And speaking of going back, we're also going to be going back to the debut album by this band, Meet the Residents. Now, I do realise that this technically isn't the first, at least, release that these guys have done, but this is the debut album technically, as it was the first release to the public. Well, public being about 50 people who actually bought this album on its initial release. Certainly not a surprise when it comes to this album, pretty much being a guarantee to raising some eyebrows when listening to this album. I'm not the first to admit, hopefully, that I was at least interested in hearing probably the weirdest cover I've ever heard in my life. Nancy Sinatra's These Boots Were Made for Walking. Now, whilst Boots, the Nancy Sinatra's version, probably gives power to women, this version by the Residents probably gives power to those people who spend their time sitting in a corner eating their own shoe. What's funnier is that this song lasts about 45 to 50 seconds and then suddenly exploding into 5 or so little more ditties that last so short that you're probably thinking they're going quicker than the amount of brain cells you think are disappearing from your head when listening to this thing. But this is where I can start talking about the more positive aspects about this album, because I'm a person who believes that the better albums out there are the ones that need more listens to get the more required taste, if you want, in your ears to it. And this is no difference to this album. I will admit I played Boots at least 15 times a day for about a fortnight because I found it insanely catchy and bit of a secret, better than the Nancy Sinatra's version in a weird way. Much like I found with Trap Mask Replica, when listening to this album, I found that melodies, if I could call them melodies, pissed off after about 2 seconds. But since the songs are so short, at least in the first half of this album, I only want to replay it more. So, in a way, it's better. Also, even if you're listening to this and some of the noises that come on you'd probably even consider ear rape, as the internet likes to say, I'd be really surprised if you listened to the full thing and didn't find something in there that you at least enjoyed a tiny bit. And again, a lot like Trap Mask Replica, I feel that these musicians are kind of self-aware how bonkers it all is, especially I can see with the lyrics. So since the lyrics are so mad, I can give my own perspective on what it all means, if it means anything, instead of like many songs out there that paint the picture for you. I'll give you an example. One of my favourite songs on here is called Smelly Tongues, and the only lyrics in it is, "Smelly tongues look just as they felt." So, on first listen, I thought that was just a load of nonsense, but then I thought, I wonder if they're trying to cover all the 5 senses going on there. Obviously, smelly is the nose, tongues is the tongue, look, as in the eyes, felt as in, you know, just feeling. And then I thought the only thing that's missing is hearing and listening. But then I found, wait, I'm listening to the song. So it sort of makes sense. But aside from that, I'll be honest, that's pretty much the only thing that can sort of make sense. Because after that, your guess is as good as mine of what the hell's going on, especially in the lyrics. I mean, one minute these guys will be doing a rendition of The Human Beings Is Nobody But Me, and then they'll suddenly be wishing their relatives a Merry Christmas in the weirdest Christmas song I've ever heard, Season's Greetings. From that, I'm pretty much sure that the average listener won't really care about me and into this as they probably care about what the hell is actually going on. Especially, we could talk about all the genres that this thing covers. I mean, I know it's avant-garde, tape music, experimental, it's mainly that, but that could mean anything. But I'm hearing a load of genres in here, and I'm hearing bloody noise rock, doo-wop, rock operas, even a bit funk in the song called Infant Tango, which is probably the most normal, I hate using that word, but pretty much is normal song on here. It has a really good funk driven guitar, which also shows that these guys aren't just like making it up on the spot, they do actually have a bit talent. And not knowing who these artists are or what they're actually doing or playing just adds to the weirdness and the interest I get over this album. I mean, there's some women vocals over here that are actually really nice, but I don't think I've ever heard them in any other Residents album, unless they've been changed through editing, which I wouldn't be surprised either, because there's a lot of range in vocals in this album, which again just adds to the range. I mean, it's even instruments, I have no idea. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of piano that's being played, some guitars, and what I suppose it would call percussion. But there's some noises in here, I have no idea how the hell they've done it, and it's again quite impressive, for especially in the decade. And I don't think they were the most popular band in the world to achieve a load of money to make this album, so I found that even more impressive. Alright, I'll talk about the negatives, I guess, but I'm not going to talk about it being weird or anything like that, because really that's your own opinion, I suppose. Yeah, like I said at the start of the video, I wish this album was like the first half of the album, short and sweet. Alright, wait, not sweet, maybe quite sour, but I wish it was more like that. Quite catchy and short and simple, but this album gets progressively longer and longer until reaching even the 10-minute mark on one of the songs. I mean, some songs like Sweet Area and Infant Tango hold quite well, but others like Season's Greetings and Crisis Blues, just too long. It wears thin, some of it, and some of their experimentations go on too long as well, especially in Crisis Blues. Like I say, I doubt that these guys were rolling in the big bucks when making this album either, but the sound quality isn't too good. I mean, I suppose these guys might have purposely made it sound bad occasionally to give it the more grittier and harsher sounds, but some of the songs have a bit more of a nicer tinge to it, especially songs like Concealo's Departure, which have a lot of keyboards and stuff that I would have liked to have it a bit more umped up and spread out through my ears in the stereo, but it's all a bit muddy and watered down, which is a shame. I know these guys made 2 versions of it as well, so maybe now, if they made it again, or at least remastered it, hopefully they can make it sound better in some way or another. Anyways, time to conclude, I believe. This album was probably very startling when released if the people who actually heard it, like 50 people. It would have been great if it actually got popularity, because just to see the reactions of people. I believe the only real popularity it got was Controversy, because as you can see in the album cover, it looks a lot like Meet the Beatles. I won't complain about its originality, there's some really good songs in here. It may be a bit too weird for the average listener, but just give it a few more listens and soon enough you might like it. I really enjoyed it overall. I think it's a great album, great idea. I just like the idea of these guys just making whatever the hell they like, and they succeeded. And I'm glad they've got at least popularity enough for me to listen to it, because I enjoy it. Overall, I'd give it a 8.6 out of 10, I suppose. Yeah, that's it. So, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and catch you later in my next review if you actually turn up. Thank you, bye-bye.